And you spend. Lost down. Never had a pen, so he bought my pen. I'd never see it again. Started getting those pens with a cap. Yeah. Can't go anywhere. Trust you two have recovered from Bonney Lake days and tunes at taps. It is 6 o'clock on August 28th, 2024. Call the Bonney Lake Planning Commission order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Chair Solon,
Here.
Vice Chair Benyon,
Here.
Commissioner Dahl,
Here.
Commissioner Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Strauss Boyd,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmer,
Here.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Here.
Planning Manager Belisky,
Here.
Assistant Planner Speets, here.
At this time, we take a poll as to who can be here at the next meeting, but I see our next meeting is to be determined. So do we have a date?
Jason Sullivan and I are out of the area at a conference this coming week, which would be our normal meeting. The next available meeting would be the 11th, when we would potentially have the environmental stewardship element for you. Are you guys available on that date, or should we send an email requesting availability for future dates?
Show of hands as to who can make the 11th September. 1, 2, 3. That up or down?
Down, sorry.
How?
I'm traveling for work.
We don't have a, well.
Yeah,
we
we
do.
do.
Yeah, we have a quorum.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can meet next on the 11th of September. Approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting from the 24th of July.
So moved.
Moved. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Are there any comments, additions, corrections? They're shaking their heads. Okay. Call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I see nobody for public comment and concerns. We do not have a public hearing. Only continuing business, the community development element.
Thank you.
Will give us our briefing. I'd appreciate it.
So good evening, commissioners. You have already seen a good portion of this, either as the housing element standalone that came to you in early July, or other components that have come to you, the land capacity analysis, the growth alternatives memo, that kind of thing. And so really this is taking all of the work that you have done so far and putting it all together in the one element. For anybody watching this recording later or joining us online, what we are looking at tonight is the community development element. This is a component of our 2024 comprehensive plan, and the comprehensive plan is the 20-year vision for the city. This community development element combines 3 mandatory elements of the Growth Management Act: the housing element, the land use element, and the economic development element. Economic development is in there as a mandatory element, but because it's never been funded by the state, it's not technically mandatory yet. the city of Bonney Lake chooses to do it anyway and continue to build on that existing set of policies and information that they have in there to help flesh out their community development element. So this draft, this final draft that we've presented to you, which I realized after I sent it to you, managed to delete all of the exhibit numbers. So I apologize for that. I have fixed it. But thankfully it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Builds on the prior work of the Planning Commission to take a look at the growth alternatives, including the recommendation to council, which council did move forward with, the bend the trend alternative. Which ultimately focuses growth on areas of Midtown and the downtown centers and expands areas zoned in our lowest zoning category, because we, as a community that is not connected to the growth area, contiguous growth area of Tacoma, is supposed to slow down our growth. And so that's why what we're seeing here is kind of an attempt to curve the growth towards more of a flat line instead of a straight up like it has been. The Growth Management Act requires us to adopt and regularly update our comprehensive plan, including these mandatory elements. The housing element, of course, basically needed an entire overhaul, and everything else was in place to support it. So to provide kind of an overview of what we did now that you're seeing this whole element together, in the introduction, we expanded that regulatory context and added a high-level summary of the laws enacted since the 2015 update, in part to explain the why there are so many changes and why the language that is in there is in there. We converted a number of sections throughout to more reader-friendly organization. So tried to take big paragraphs and make them into a bulleted list, tried to get more towards language that was accessible to a wider variety of our constituents. And so you'll see that throughout, and then really organizing it in a way that kind of got you from, okay, here's the regulatory context, here's our existing conditions, this is the growth target we need to meet, and so here are our policies, and kind of helping walk through that analysis for each of the sections. The population profile used to cover things that were specific to the economic vitality component or to housing, so those have been moved to their appropriate sections. Within housing, as we discussed at our July 10th meeting, we've really organized this to, again, try to explain the huge lift of changes from 2015. Really that we are now required to plan for housing affordable to all income levels and document that through data. So the housing equity report gives one component of that to help undo disparate impacts for various socioeconomic groups, not just racially disparate groups. But then also looking at our community as a whole. So the housing profile was updated with current data for the city, including those subgroups as an appendix. The data in that whole section forms the basis of that identified housing need, and really, again, walking through the math of here's what we have, here's what we've done since that kind of math was done, getting us to the gap, as well as documenting barriers to housing construction and those kinds of things that we can do more on the policy side or on the development code side to help things move forward. The housing goals and policies, we did have some changes, but for the most part, those were in there to address those identified needs. Economic vitality was incorporated from an entirely separate element that used to be a standalone element, but because of the interrelatedness of all of these things, we wanted them all to be together. So in this one, we added a section again to explain that state law, the multi-county planning policies that come to us from Vision 2050, which is adopted by Puget Sound Regional Council with input from all of the cities and counties. And the countywide planning policies, which are adopted by Pierce County that we need to be consistent with. The economic profile was updated to reflect our current conditions and trends and kind of see what's happening there, as well as add a section on access to childcare, since that definitely impacts the ability of our households to participate in the workforce. Employment growth was also moved in to updated to match the current targets and land capacity analysis data that we have from Pierce County, as well as our own internal study. The rest of it was minor updates for clarity. The only update we did to the goals and policies, other than updates for clarity or to reflect current conditions, was to add a policy on access to childcare and trying to support that with our development regulations. Property rights, I believed you saw earlier in the spring before I joined you. So that has not changed other than maybe being moved to a different section number since it was sent from you to City Council. And then in the land use section, we updated that to reflect that bend the trend alternative that you evaluated earlier this year. Like the other sections, we added a section to explain the regulatory context, the state law, MPPs and CPPs. We updated the land use profile, so the amount of land allocated to each one and timing consistent with the data that we did for the land capacity analysis. So you'll notice we could do it for today, but then you're not having consistency across the various data sets, which we did to the best of our ability throughout the document. Existing development patterns was updated to reflect current conditions. So you'll notice that the Lake Tap Center is gone, right? That's no longer part of the plan. And then things that really should be part of that separate centers plan, we took out also. The potential annexation areas that was relocated and updated to reflect the current potential annexation areas. I believe a couple of them were taken out. The future land use map overview was updated for clarity, just some minor tweaks. And then the designations and the map were updated to reflect that bend the trend alternatives. So the moderate density residential was taken out and consolidated, and a number of locations were updated to that RN and what is currently the R1 zoning district. And then for the policies, we consolidated the policies from the potential annexation areas and development patterns. We did some minor updates for clarity or to reflect current conditions. And then we added some policies to be consistent with the CPPs and state law, including adding a policy related to siting of essential public facilities. We cannot effectively prohibit through our development regulations or actually prohibit them. And these are facilities that are considered very difficult to site. Just generally due to neighborhood concerns. So things like dumps or large regional facilities, et cetera. Preserving historic and cultural resources. So there was a state law that was passed, I want to say in 21 or 22, requiring cities to do a better job of coordinating with tribes. And then a section adding language about enhancing the health of residents. So how we incorporate that with the multimodal features and really just making the city a healthier place to live. So with that, and other than the exhibits snafu, I look forward to any comments, corrections, clarifications that you all have. And we are hoping to bring this to council on September 10th.
So we make a recommendation
Please.
today.
Yes, please.
Anyone have any questions? I mean, it's a ton of stuff, but we've seen it. Yes.
I just have one comment. I was looking through all the charts and I really like, especially the leakage, retail leakage chart where you guys added the little bars on the bottom saying leaving Bonney Lake or staying in Bonney Lake. I was like, oh, that made the chart just so much clearer. So I really like the tweaks that you guys made to the different graphs and charts. I thought it made it even more user friendly and readable. So great job.
Brad, do you have a question?
Do, so I think it's on page 39. So I just want to make sure that I understand this. So it says that House Bill 1337 was passed and requires cities to allow up to 2 accessory dwelling units on all lots to allow single unit housing. So anybody can put in 2 ADUs now on their lots. That's something that the governor has mandated. Is that it?
Well, the legislature with governor's sign off. So essentially that bill requires us to update our provisions around ADUs, and we will need to do that with Planning Commission review. It is a change to the development regulations. That update is due by 6 months after adoption of the comp plan. So by the end of June 2025, or the state regulations supersede the cities. It doesn't mean that you don't have any provisions, right? So they'd still need to ensure they either have sewer or they have adequate room for a septic system to serve that many units. It requires us to get rid of any owner occupancy requirement. Essentially, the idea is to remove barriers to constructing accessory dwelling units and to allow for the condominiumization of those units so they can be sold off. So we have some work to think through in terms of what does that look like for utility connections and metering, impact fees, that kind of thing. So yes, but whether functionally that will happen, Bonney Lake has more ADUs in the permit queue than I've seen at other jurisdictions. I mean, I worked at one that had 7 and maybe 10 plus years. But I don't expect there to be a tidal wave of them. They would still need to meet your bulk regulations. There is a provision in that state law that says if there is a accessory structure that's non-conforming in terms of setback, that you do need to allow for conversion of those, unless it's on an alley that is plowed for snow. Clearly not a problem here. So we will be going through that process with you probably late this year, early next year to do those updates.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure we were going to revisit it because I was just kind of had a few concerns about
Yeah.
that one.
Any development regulation that is substantive, meaning it changes the requirements around how you use your land, we do need to bring those to you. We bring procedural updates as a courtesy because you telling us, hey, that doesn't make any sense is really helpful. So it will be coming to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Head shakes, head shakes. Very good briefing as always.
Thank you.
And no additions, corrections, nobody jumping up and down. So I would say it's time for the motion, which is on page 5.
I can
Okay, Brad,
do it. So I move to recommend that the final review draft of the community development element proceeds to city council.
and is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? None appearing. Call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The motion goes through and the city council gets the work. New business? None? For the good of the order. Correspondence. Staff comments.
I should thank the 4 of you who came out on a very rainy Bonney Lake days to join us in the tent. Honestly, you guys were the rock stars of all of the future land use and parks planning questions. It was really neat to see you working, come talk. I'm like, okay, well, you're very ambitious on this quite cold and rainy Saturday. So I really appreciate that. We made an effort this year to have a wider variety of staff available, and between you guys and us, I feel like even though it wasn't a hot sunny day, we still had pretty good interactions, and I really appreciate that because all of that gets documented as part of this comprehensive plan. So thank you so much for showing up, not just then, but also at the Tunes at Taps days and really putting your best foot forward. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner comments. Well, I have one to say back to you because Tunes at Taps and Bonney Lake Days were wonderful this year. And I think we got a lot of the word out, a lot of education done. And it was primarily to you two. I think we all appreciate it. Want to say thank you. Any other commissioner comments? No? Yes.
I cannot make the next meeting because I have a Beautify Bonnie Lake meeting that night, so I will, sorry, unfortunately, two things at the same time.
That's what was bugging me about it.
Yes, and we have our team leader meeting that night, and since I'm the chair, I should probably be there. Grant doesn't have to be, but
No.
I have to be. So sorry for
Do I
missing.
need to put that on the record that I won't be there either on the 11th? I don't know if that needs to be an official.
Strauss, Boyd, Dahl, Sullum, Wilkins, and Gilmer
Yeah.
could make it.
They record it, and when you don't show up for the thing, and we know you're gone, we make a motion, and sometimes the person gets
Okay.
excused.
Sorry,
I mean,
we'll never live that down.
no, you're not. I was gone and came back and they hadn't excused me. Oh,
Yeah, if you have a valid reason, then you can get excused. If you just don't show up, then you get in trouble.
And are we, should we bring that up at this formal setting when we can't attend? Is that the process?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just let us, yeah,
Okay.
let them know.
thank you.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Second it.
Motion made and seconded. Discussions? Objections? Call the question. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned. Thank you again.
Okay, so new commissioner. Welcome. Yeah, we didn't introduce Ernie. Welcome to the planning commission.